Hey everyone, this is Peter Hernandez, and this is The Core Truth. And today I have Alex Vichinsky, top broker at Douglas Elliman, on the podcast today. Welcome, Alex. It's so great to have you.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, totally. So, Alex, get us to know you a little bit. Give us a little scoop on your background.
Of course. From the Bay Area, from Oakland, California originally. Family of four, older sister. Went to college on the East Coast. Ended up getting back into California after college and ultimately went into tech for a long time. So started at Facebook and went to Square and Microsoft and LinkedIn. And ultimately, long story short, that led me to move to Los Angeles with my then girlfriend and now wife and get into real estate because I had a little bit of a moment in San Francisco and I was trying to buy myself. And here I am, long story short.
Okay, well, first of all, what was it like being so early in the tech industry and being part of that kind of tech revolution?
Of course. You know, at the time, as a 21-year-old, you don't get to take advantage the way you want to, right? So you see life through a different lens. However, when I was there at Facebook, at least for about 4 to 5 years, I got my hand in there as a non-tech person because I was a child psychology major. And ultimately, I got in through another connection and really spent the most of my time doing illegal compliance. Ultimately, you know what you don't know and you don't know what you don't know. And when I was at Facebook, it was such a rapid growth of entrepreneurship and learning and understanding what makes a business tick from the inside out and seeing what I was a part of growing from 350 employees now at tens of thousands of employees. It was just a learning experience to provide me how to operate not only as a young adult, but to be a part of something greater than yourself. And ultimately, tech in general is one of those idealistic places that thinks they can change the world. And in some ways they can. And so I try to apply that to myself, both as a W-2 employee and now as a 1099 employee. So I do think it gave me the foundation I needed to be somewhat successful and have interpersonal relationships, both professionally and personally. So it was very instrumental in my growth.
Amazing. So I just can't help but ask this. Facebook, Instagram, which do you think's better for realtors in terms of promoting themselves?
Well, the great thing is Instagram is part of Facebook. So either way, it's going to be great. I personally use Instagram a lot more than Facebook in general. I use them all: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, LinkedIn, because obviously I've been to plenty of these places. But for what my business and how I connect with my clients and the people who may not know me, Instagram is a great tool for me, specifically both free and paid, to put out what I need the world to see about me. So for me, Instagram seems to be a good way to go.
Cool. Hey, so culturally, coming from San Francisco down to Los Angeles, I know there's a rivalry between the two cities. There always has been. I think it's kind of a friendly rivalry, but
Yeah.
It gets to be pretty passionate for sure, especially when it comes to our sports teams. And boy, do they hate it when we call you guys Frisco, right?
Frisco, of course, and never call it there.
Don't do that, right? That's one thing you don't do. But what was it like culturally making that move, coming down to Southern Cal?
Of course. I mean, I'm from the Bay Area, so I've only ever known the Bay Area from when I was born up until almost college. And it's funny, when I came down here, the rivalry seems to be one-sided in the sense that there's a lot of people from the Bay Area and San Francisco in general that look at Los Angeles a certain way. But once I moved down here thinking, would I be a part of the culture that I thought, there doesn't seem to be a difference in terms of the LA look at the Bay Area and San Francisco, meaning sports-wise it's different, but culturally it doesn't seem so. That was a really nice shock for me, in the sense that San Francisco and the Bay Area, very progressive, doesn't necessarily surround itself by a lot of the stereotypes that can be true in LA. But ultimately, what really led my then girlfriend, now wife, and us to just quit our jobs out of nowhere, living in San Francisco for 10 years, which we loved. It was a beautiful city. It was really when we came down here for a weekend and had an amazing time. And I've been to LA lots of times, but we got to explore all different parts of the city. We went to the beach, we went to the hills, we went for hiking, we saw restaurants, we went to downtown, we went to the valley, we went to Malibu. And it really kind of gave us the sense that LA has everything that a person could want. Whether you're from the city, whether you're from a rural part, like you can find what you want within a couple hours. You have the desert, you have the ocean, you have the mountains, you have wine country. It's really a very unique place. And so the difference between where I was and where I am is just the vastness of being able to think that there's so much more to explore. And I've been here for about 7 or 8 years. I still feel like I'm new.
Yeah. So do you ever wonder like what your real estate career would have been like if you had stayed up in San Francisco? I mean, arguably some of the most expensive markets in California are in San Francisco, especially in Marin County and some of those areas there.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked back at that or maybe thought of even expanding your business up there and maybe work in both markets?
I have thought about it. I wouldn't say it's ever been a serious transition or a serious move yet, because I still believe that I am the beginning stages of my career, even though I've done relatively well. So I still want to grow what I have here. And ultimately, considering I have lots of family and friends living in San Francisco, Marin County, East Bay, South Bay, there's always a sense of what could I do in the future. But I somewhat operate under a sense of I don't necessarily look back in my career or my past. Uh, I, there's a sort of negative connotation for me with looking back and regret. And so I
Yeah.
look at, and this will probably feed into some of the things we've talked about later in this podcast, which is everything is a learning experience. And my time in San Francisco and my upbringing in Oakland really led me to where I'm at today. So I do look at my time in San Francisco as a growth period, a learning period, and being in a really urban environment and being able to walk everywhere and have that sort of tech background while also being true to myself and who my family is and my parents. I do believe there's going to be a potential future there, just not now, because I still want to get really solid footing here in LA.
I love that. And where did you, and for the good of the group, where did you actually end up in terms of your practice? Where do you live? And what part of LA did you finally settle on?
Of course, I've explored, in the beginning when we moved here, as everyone thinks they want to, is I tried with my wife to live near the beach. So we ended up trying to be the most familiar place, which was Playa Vista. It was a very new community that was built by the Irvine Company near the water. That was because we moved down here thinking we might still, both of us were from tech. And that was where a lot of tech was happening, and Google was being built and Facebook nearby, the honest companies. So we wanted to kind of be near what we were new. So we started there. We moved and bought eventually in West Hollywood, because West Hollywood was another place that after about a year and a half, we realized reminded us of San Francisco in a lot of the good ways, where it was walkable, restaurants, shops, exploring, really central to most of LA. And then, of course, when we started having children, we wanted to have a bigger place, and we moved to the suburb Studio City. So currently where I'm at in my home office in Studio City, in my idyllic home for two babies. So right now we're living that young parent life.
Fabulous, fabulous. So I know they call Playa Vista Silicon Beach.
Yes.
You think that label is accurate?
It's funny because I used to, when I was still in tech, I interviewed back when Snapchat was just starting. I remember having an interview there right on the beach in Venice, and I thought, this is a very different feeling than being in Menlo Park or Palo Alto, where I first started at Facebook. And it just was the biggest dichotomy between San Francisco and LA, is having your company right on the beach and people wearing sandals versus tech companies where you're wearing your Patagonia vests and
Right.
being amongst like the suburbia. So it's very apt.
So one of the things that you believe all real estate agents, brokers, maybe even in all businesses, when you think about it, is understanding your superpower. Can you talk a little bit about that? and maybe how you discovered your superpower and what your superpower is?
Of course, and I'm glad you brought that up. I do believe that everyone, whether you're in real estate or not, has their unique ability to do something. It's been a very interesting transition for me coming from a family that's from New York. My mom was born in Bronx, my dad was born in Brooklyn, my sister and I were born in Oakland, and we come from a very different mentality. And I do credit Los Angeles in a positive way for this kind of mindset transition for me, where the people that I've met, especially when I came out of tech, where everyone had a common goal, right? So you work at a company and your common goal for your department, for your company, is to lead it in the direction of changing the world. And whatever it is that I contributed when I was at legal compliance was protecting my users, working with law enforcement, civil attorneys, copyright, trademark. That was my role. But once I transitioned out of being an employee and then having my own business as a real estate agent and having a director of operations and junior agents underneath me, I realized that I had a special ability that I was able to hone in on. And I think that everyone, specifically in real estate, can find that superpower that they have, meaning they can take this one specific thing that they know that they're good at, that they enjoy, that they can build off of, and that can really help them transition their careers from point A to point Z. So for me, I really look back on my time, and I was able to be look within to find that superpower, and I believe I found that.
That's really interesting. I think we all need to tap into our superpowers because it's our gift, right? And so we should multiply it and send it out into the world. I agree with that 100%. I think this industry right now is being disrupted in so many ways, and it always is. I mean, like someone asked me the other day, Alex, like, when were we going to get back to a normal market? My answer was, well, give me your definition of normal, because every market's been different since I've been in the business. There hasn't been one year that has been identical to the last year. One of the things that you've really honed in on and I think perfected as a business person is looking at opportunity or finding opportunity and then seizing it. Talk about that relative to change as well as to how it's helped you in your business.
Agreed. And yes, I do look at that specific topic as somewhat my superpower, where I can look at any situation, whether it's a conversation that we're having right now, whether it's meeting a new buyer, whether it's talking to an escrow person, whether it's engaging with new tech. Anything is an opportunity. And it's really a matter of looking at what that opportunity may or may not be. So I think for me specifically, I look at something and I say, how can I use this, not selfishly, but how can I use this for my benefit? How can I build off of that? And how can I develop, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a process? Because real estate is what you make of it. It's one of those things that's so abstract in so many different ways that you can be as hands-off or hands-on as you want it to be. And so seizing opportunity for me has been at the forefront of my career in real estate. I'm almost 40, and I started my career all over, as lots of us do when they get into real estate. And I started as an assistant. I knew that when I got into real estate, even though I had the work track record, I've been in the workforce for 10, 12, 13 years, that real estate it was new to me. And so I needed to humble myself and learn the tricks of the trade from someone else, like a mentor. And I believe that a lot of people probably on our podcast has come back and said, it's really good to find someone that you can learn from, that you can grow with, and that you can ask questions and take a step back to take 3 or 4 steps forward. So I look back on my career, and yes, I think a lot of things can be about timing, and timing is a lot of a positive force for people. And I do think I had great timing in terms of when I got into the business. But I also look back, and I think there's an element of luck, but I also think there's an element of seizing that opportunity. I seized the opportunity where I found someone, and I'm not shy to mention that Michelle Schwartz, when I first started at the agency, gave me an opportunity. And I looked at that opportunity as a way for me to skyrocket my own growth. And again, I think that as a side note is it's important for people who are watching and listening to this when they seize an opportunity is to be able to have honest conversations with themselves and honest conversations with the people that are important to them in their lives, whether they have children, a spouse, a husband, a wife, anybody, and be honest with them. So again, long story, when I took this opportunity, I had to talk with my wife and say, temporarily, our relationship is not going to be my number one priority. And I want to know how you feel about that because this opportunity is for me and you. And I remember my wife, one of the biggest topics we had at our wedding was we just took risks and we enabled each other to take risks and never stood in the way of someone's growth. And this was one of those places where my wife really enabled me to take that opportunity and seize it. And she took a step back and supported me, just like I've done with her in spades. So I think with people, it's a matter of identifying what the opportunity is to them and seeing how they can go about making it their path.
Well, two things there. One is having a great support team around you. And obviously your spouse or partner is extremely important. And if they're constantly beating on you for not bringing home the bacon, or they're beating on you for pursuing something that's not a steady paycheck, or these kinds of conversations can get really tiresome, old, and even destructive to your success. But you also said that you found an opportunity to be mentored. And I think what a lot of new agents don't understand, because almost every new agent that comes into the industry wants to be mentored. They're almost all wanting to be on teams right now. But here's what they don't want to do: pay for it. They don't want to pay the mentor. They don't want to pay the team. They think they have a deal. They want to get 100% of that deal, and they still want you to coach them. Talk to me a little bit about the sacrifices that are necessary if you want to be successful in this business.
I 100% agree with you. I think that comes with seizing the opportunity and having the self-knowledge to know what you can get out of something and how you can give back. And again, this may have been easier for me because I come from a family of civic service. So I have a father who's been a lifelong pediatric cancer doctor, and I've had a mother who is a civil rights attorney. And here I am going into real estate, which is a sidestep. But I took what they gave me in terms of value, and I applied that to what we do here. And so when I started as an assistant with Michelle, it was an opportunity for me, but it was also at the service of somebody else. And I saw me making basically less than minimum wage, because at the time it was just about, for me, sacrificing everything in my life to make sure that this person's business would thrive because of my contributions. And once I learned what I needed to learn and got to where I needed to be after a certain amount of time, I ended up going on a team myself. So I worked with, James Harris and David Parnes back at the agency for quite some time. And the sacrifices that you're talking about are not only monetary, but it's also what you give for the greater good. And again, if you're on the team, that's the whole purpose, because you're going to be on a team and you need to give to get. So whether you're with one person, whether you're with a team of 5, whether you're a team with 50, and of course I'm on a team now with 75 plus agents spread across America and Equin Gomes, and we've got mentorship available. And it's not only about the splits. And I've also had multiple assistants and director of operations myself, and I try to instill the value of, look at this as your grad school if you didn't go to it. Look at this as a place where you get to take what you like and spit out what you don't. And even though you might not be making hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars right now, this is going to give you the foundation for success in the future. So I think if you're looking as a new agent to learn and grow and have mentorship, just realize it takes time. And a lot of people will need to adapt. And so I think, again, one of the things I have a seizing opportunity, but I'm an easily adaptable person. So going back to one more thing, which was every market you've been through is changed. There's no normal market. It's about adapting. And of course, I've been in the business for 7 years, and I've seen it change now 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and adapting seems to be the difference between success and failure to me. So that just leads us right in. Perfect tee up for our next point. Every moment is a master class in discovery. And so that means successes, failures, and maybe even just non-events. How do you like have that awareness, and how do you develop it to learn on a daily basis so that you don't keep repeating, and as I say, do the spin cycle?
Of course. I do look at everything as a learning opportunity. I think people have to remove the ego from their life as much as they can. And I am guilty. I have my own ego, but I do look at what I do as something that I don't know everything. And ultimately, I tell my clients, and this is something I say 100% say, I look at myself as an educational guide through this process for my clients, buyers, sellers, anybody, referrals, my assistants. I look at this process as I'm an educational guide. I'm here to give you the information as someone who's been through it and has had experience, but you are the boss. You are the boss on how this goes. And it's ultimately my job to make sure that you're safe and that we don't make mistakes as much as we can along the way. And so I always tell them, I don't know everything. And I'm not afraid to admit that. So if something comes in from an escrow officer for a new piece of paperwork, if an attorney comes to me and says something that I didn't know, if an inspection comes back and yields something that I've never heard of, I will go to my client and say, this is a new thing for me, but I will dig into it and get back to you. So I look at everything as a learning opportunity, again, opportunity, and a learning experience. So I think moments or master classes and discovery is a really great way to understand there's never a time to be stagnant, right? And we talked about sort of adaptability. I adapt to the situation as needed. And I think a lot of people believe that if they do things one way and it works, they will continue to do it the same way, and maybe they'll stall at some point. So I do believe that there's opportunity in everything.
Do you journal or take notes?
I do.
You do. So
I do. I try to do that every day. Again, it's a semi-new thing since I've moved to LA, but I do believe in self-reflection. Meditation for me isn't something I'm still working on, but ultimately with real estate, again, it's one of those places that can lead you in so many different directions that's important for you to have routine and process and procedure.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Um, so you've talked a lot about relations, and we're going to get into that, relationships. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to point out one thing that we didn't talk about, but that's been very, very clear and evident in this conversation, and that is communication. And when you went to your wife and you said, honey, I'm going to have to put my business first for a while. I hope you can handle it. Can you handle it? Because obviously my marriage is very important and I love you very much, but for me to get this thing off the ground, it's going to take a lot of my time. Or going to a client and saying, hey, I really don't know the answer to this, and I want to be honest and truthful with you. And to me, this is effective communication. You're a communicator, Alex. Talk about that and talk about how relationships and relations are what's going to create a great business.
I 100% agree, and thank you. You know, I do look at that there are different ways to be a successful real estate agent. There's no one way that fits all. And so what works for me may not work for other people. And what works for other people may not work for me. I do believe that I am a relationship-based real estate advisor. I look at the relationships I have and the people that I meet, and I ultimately want them to be in my life. I don't want to just have it end at me doing a transaction with them. I want to support them as they would support me. And that's why, again, one of those tools like an Instagram is a great way to connect with friends and clients and referrals and all these kind of things. I want them to know who I am. And that's why I actually put myself out there on social media and in my relationships and lunches and whatnot. But I think, again, going back to it, I look at myself as a relationship-based real estate advisor. And I believe that the way that I interact with my clients and my friends and my family and other colleagues, by the way, is by being a good communicator, by being an over communicator, and to always let someone know respectfully where I stand And it's funny, as my current director of operations, Madison, she's kind of the same person as me when I started, where she's taking a step back to take 5 steps forward and really learning about how well it can serve you to communicate respectfully and honestly with everybody around you. And I think going into the business side of it is I see a lot of transactions happen where one agent is pitted against another, or one agent feels that they need to one up the other, when ultimately the whole goal here for everybody, seller, buyer, listing agent, buyer's agent, is to transact but close a home for both parties and do it in a way that we're all on the same team. So when I get on a new escrow, which I've opened up one today, it's important for me to go to thank you. It's important for me to go to the other agent and say, great job, we got this started. I just want to let you know that we're in this together. It is my goal for us to have a smooth escrow and work through everything, bad or good, together. And I think that shapes a lot of the relationships I have within the industry and also helps me grow. So as long as someone can come into this with positive mindset is one thing, but also just a positive attitude, a positive way of looking at how this works, it can really take shape and forms in so many different ways for people to grow. So if anyone who's new is looking at this, you have a lot of work to do, but it's an easy thing to do if you have the right mentality about it. So relationships for me are everything.
Well, and to that point, you describe yourself as a worker among workers, maybe an agent among agents. I mean, you're not exalting yourself, yet you're very competitive. I totally get your personality. It's not like you don't want to be number one, but you don't make that of the utmost importance. You don't make that, or maybe you're just not like, how would I describing that? Just putting it on top of everybody. But instead, you get in there, you roll up your sleeves, and you're a worker among workers. Talk about that a little bit.
Agreed. So again, this probably goes back to my days as a legal compliance person. So a lot of the things I did were behind the scenes, and where you get your work done, you don't talk about it. And ultimately, one of those times was I was working on child safety related issues at Facebook, which was a very sensitive topic. And they would put us in a room where no one else could see what we were doing. And ultimately, to switch into something like real estate took a big hit in terms of saying, how do I formulate who I need to be in this new role? And I look at myself and say, real estate involves you being in sales. It involves you being a marketer. It involves you being a communicator. It involves a lot of things that I wasn't used to. And so I look at what I do as sales, but that takes a seat back behind wanting to build a relationship with someone for the long term, whether it's a developer, a friend who's moved from out of state to here. So I look at myself as, yes, I'm competitive because ultimately I need to be in order to be successful in this business, but you can be competitive in an ethical and positive way. And so I might, what's that?
Even collaborative, I thought.
And collaborative, yes, 100%. And I think I look at why I decided to stay on a team my entire career. I've been on my own for 6 months at a time. It's not for me. Real estate can be a lonely business if you let it. And ultimately, I think that comes back to wanting to serve a greater good, which is why I'm okay giving up a bigger split of my commissions, even as I've been doing well enough where I'm okay learning from others who are better than me. I don't want to be the best in the room. I don't want to one up somebody. And again, it kind of goes back into the way I operate my business, where I always believe I can be doing better. And so to surround myself with people who know something maybe more or different, that I can learn from them. So to be a worker among workers, it's probably going to be a lifelong practice. I don't ever want that to change. So I do look at real estate as a place where there's no day that's the same. And I think that's what continues to help me grow and thrive.
You also have mentioned that you try to remain coachable, and you work with the coaches. I understand. You're still with Tom Ferry, right?
Yes.
And I guess the question there is, you have all this business experience. You've done really, really well as an agent. Why do you think you need to be coached? And And how do you remain coachable? I guess would be my two questions.
Yeah. How I remain coachable really is even this kind of conversation can help me learn from something. So after this, I'm probably going to take 5 or 10 minutes to sit down, reflect on the conversation, and think about what it is that I can take from this. And the same thing goes from being coached. Whether you're a new agent and don't have the money to be able to be coached, you can find a mentor, someone within the office, a broker to have 5-minute conversations about what it is that I need to learn about and delve into. And ultimately, being stagnant means falling backwards. It doesn't mean staying where you're at. And ultimately, I think having a coach or finding someone that can help you along the way helps you grow consistently. And I feel a sense of duty to myself and the people who work with and for me to continue to adapt and thrive and learn more. So, as someone who does have coaching, it helps me realize there's more to it than what I believe is right. And I don't look at myself as someone who I have an opinion. I want to be called out. And I think one of the things that people who know me is I tend to surround myself, including my wife and my mother and my sister, with strong, opinionated, powerful women. I come from a feminist family, and the people who are in my life and who work with me and around me, I want them to call me out. And so my coach happens to be a woman. My director of operations happens to be a woman. Marcy Roth, who is a close colleague and one of the reasons I joined Douglas Elliman, is a powerful woman. Julia Spillman, who's the CEO of Eklund Gomes, is a powerful woman. I just seem to gravitate towards that. And again, that works for me. But my point is being able to take constructive criticism, apply it to myself personally and professionally. And again, with coaching, it's one of those things where I'm like, am I doing this right? Or is there a different way to do it? I think people can learn. Again, it goes back to a work among workers, being coachable, adaptability, and opportunity. All of these things come into play when you need to look at within and say, how can I do this differently and better?
Right, right. I love that. Now, this is something we have in our notes, and I'm not sure where we're going with this, but you say unleash your unique self into the world. I guess it's a branding conversation, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what is your brand and what is your unique self? And, and how have you done that? And especially being on a team, how do you unleash your brand?
Thank you. I mean, again, it's also kind of like with you, right? So you do these kind of podcasts because this is part of your brand, right? And it gives you a sense of comfort and growth, and it helps you shine who you are. I could not do this because I have my strengths and weaknesses, and one of my weaknesses is probably being able to lead a conversation this way in a fluid manner. But I look at myself and unleashing my unique self in the way that I look and I want to be not the same as everybody else. That doesn't mean that anyone else is worse or better. I just look at myself and I'm okay with who I am, and I try to stay true to who I am as a dad, as I don't take myself too seriously. Comedy is within everything that I do, even with a serious transaction like real estate. And ultimately, I tend to try to put that out into the world. And that might actually cause some friction for certain people, meaning they might not want to work with me because of that. But that also lets me filter out the people that I don't want to work with, right? So I think unleashing and being comfortable as much as you can be with who you are. Because by the way, I still have an ego. There are certain things I'm sensitive about. My wife would be the first one to tell everybody that I'm very sensitive. But I think I use that as a strength as much as I can. So I try to lean into dad jokes. I try to lean into being someone who doesn't take themselves seriously, to someone who looks at life and doesn't take it seriously, because ultimately it is a very serious thing. And having 2 kids and a mortgage and cars and travel and insurance, all these kind of things can help or break somebody. But I look at what I do and the change that I've made professionally, to look at this and say, just be yourself. And it's so much easier said than done. And it's going to continue to be a lifelong journey. But I think you can tell yourself, like, this is what fulfills me. And what fulfills me is making sure that I am my authentic self with everybody that I meet.
That's so funny because it was sort of hard for me to put myself out there a little bit. And it always has been because, first of all, I don't like to be considered a braggart. I don't want to be that person. You know what I mean? Yet we are our product. So people that don't market their product are going to be less successful than people that do. So it comes with the territory.
100%.
Yeah, one of the parts was, getting used to seeing yourself on video, getting used to seeing yourself in photographs, not having to curate every photograph to give that one look of yourself that you like, but to let yourself be seen in all of your most vulnerable aspects, maybe some of the ways you don't want to be seen. And I think that's about not taking yourself seriously. And it's interesting, and I'm sorry to comment on it because this is about you, not me, but I think that
Please.
One of the things that I learned was, or at least I came to a realization, was that what you don't want people to see, people are seeing of you every single day you walk outside your door. So what are you afraid of? It's like, this is me, this is who I am, take it or leave it, but this is me, right? And I think that is such a key thing in not taking yourself too seriously. Wow, Alex, this has been an amazing call. I'm going to reflect on it as well, and I'm going to take some notes because I've learned a ton from you, and I really appreciate
that.
Close us out with maybe one tip for 2024 that you are either applying or that you would just recommend experienced and new agents alike. If you were to say, this is one thing I'm focusing on because I think this is going to be the make it or break it idea, what is it?
Well, the first thing I'll say is to anybody, whether you're a new agent or a seasoned agent, is don't be afraid to ask. I've been really trying to lean into that myself, specifically going up to people that I've heard of or admire and say, ask questions, right? People won't learn unless they ask. So don't be afraid to ask questions, whether it's to a personal relationship, another agent, a broker, another team. Don't be afraid to ask. The biggest thing that I'm actually trying to lean more into, again, it's been somewhat, if someone decides to go to my Instagram, it's just at Alex Vichinsky, you'll see that I've taken that step that you were just talking about, which is to let go as much as I can and put myself out there. So I've tried to really lean into who I am as a person with video content. And again, with real estate, it can be what you make of it. And one of those things is a lot of people are silent agents. They hope that their relationship with their friends and their colleagues can shine through just by their conversations. And as someone who is an extroverted introvert, it takes a lot of my time to try to put myself out there into lunches and dinners and, kissing the baby and going out to brokers opens even, right? So it's a constant battle for someone like me to put myself out there, knowing what you said, which is people are looking at you. But again, the biggest thing I'll say from here is, besides don't be a silent agent, is to realize that no one looks at you the same way that you look at you. No one thinks about you the same way that you think about yourself, right? And ultimately, what really truly matters is how you carry yourself and how you believe you are yourself. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. And again, I do think that comes with time and wisdom and experience. But the sooner you can get to a place where you're happy with yourself, everything else will blossom. So I'm truly, there's nothing tangible with real estate that I'm really leaning to besides the positive mindset and who I am as a person.
Well, thank you so much, Alex, for spending this half hour with us. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening and watching The Court Truth. We'll be back with more great sessions. So I look forward to seeing you all. Have a great day, and back at you.
Thanks, Peter.